A desperate leopard dragged herself across the highway, and the reason why destroyed everyone. On a stormy night, a lone officer slams her brakes, saving the animal's life by inches. But this wasn't just an accident. The leopard carried scars, secrets, and something she was trying to protect. What should have been a rescue explodes into a battle against power, greed, and danger lurking in the shadows. Because behind the leopard's suffering lies a truth no one was ready to face. And when the fight turns deadly, one question remains. Can one woman's courage save more than just a life for Will? It cost her everything. I'd love to know. Where are you watching from? Type it down below. And while you're here, subscribe so you'll always catch the next story. The rain hammered down on Interstate 10 like silver bullets, turning the usually busy highway into a treacherous ribbon of wet asphalt. Wildlife Officer Larkin Hayes gripped her state truck's steering wheel tighter, fighting exhaustion after 12 straight hours of routine patrols. Her dark hair was pulled back under her department-tissued cap, and her uniform felt damp despite the truck's heating. Just 30 more minutes, she muttered to herself, squinting through the windshield wipers that fought a losing battle against the downpour. The clock on her dashboard read 11:15 at night, and the stretch of highway before her was eerily empty except for a few determined truckers. That's when she saw a dot in the harsh glare of her headlights. A shape emerged from the darkness. At first, Larkin thought her tired mind was playing tricks on her. But no, there was definitely something dragging itself across the highway. Her trained eye recognized the distinctive movement of a large cat. But something was wrong. The animal's gait was unnatural. Desperate as she drew closer, her heart nearly stopped. A leopard, emaciated and clearly injured, was attempting to cross the highway. Its once beautiful coat was dull and matted, and even through the rain, she could see the cruel marks of rope burns around its neck. "Dear God," Larkin breathed, immediately hitting her brake lights. She positioned her truck sideways across both lanes, creating a barrier just as headlights appeared in her rearview mirror. The screech of tires on wet pavement filled the air as vehicles behind her were forced to stop. The leopard collapsed in the middle of the road, its strength seemingly spent. Larkin grabbed her radio. "Dispatch, this is Officer Hayes. I have an emergency situation on I-10, mile marker 243. Large exotic cat on the roadway. I need immediate backup and veterinary support." Through her side mirror, she saw a massive 18-wheeler pull up behind her makeshift roadblock. Its driver jumped down from the cab, rain pelting his broad shoulders. As he approached her window, she rolled it down just enough to hear him. "Ma'am, everything all right?" His voice was deep but gentle, matching his weather-beaten face and concerned expression. The name on his jacket read Boone Calder. "Mr. Calder, I'm Officer Hayes. I've got a critically injured leopard on the road. I need help keeping traffic back." Until her words were cut short by the sound of squealing brakes. A tanker truck was sliding sideways, hydroplaning on the wet road surface, heading straight for where the leopard lay. Without hesitation, Boone sprinted toward the fallen animal. Larkin's heart leaped into her throat as she watched him dodge between stopped vehicles. The tanker was still sliding, its trailer swinging in a deadly arc. Boone reached the leopard just as Larkin hit her light bar, flooding the scene with emergency lights that finally caught the tanker. Driver's attention. The massive truck came to a shuddering stop, mere feet from where Boone stood, shielding the leopard with his own body. The rain continued to pour, but time seemed to stand still in that moment. Larkin grabbed her medical kit and ran to join them, her boots splashing through puddles. "That was either the bravest or the craziest thing I've ever seen," she said, kneeling beside Boone and the leopard. The big cat's eyes were half closed, but Larkin could see she was still breathing. "Probably a bit of both," Boone replied with a slight smile, rain dripping from his trucker cap. "What's the plan, Officer Hayes?" "Larkin," she corrected automatically, pulling out a thermal blanket from her kit. "And right now, we need to keep her stable until help arrives." She noticed how Boone positioned himself to block the wind from the injured animal, his presence steady and reassuring. Together, they worked to carefully cover the leopard, Larkin's trained hands checking vitals while Boone helped keep the blanket in place against the driving rain. Other drivers had emerged from their vehicles, creating an impromptu barrier with their headlights to protect the rescue effort. "She's been abused," Larkin said quietly, her fingers finding more rope burns and healing wounds beneath the leopard's fur. "This is no escaped zoo animal. Someone did this to her." Boone's expression hardened. "Seen something similar before, up in East Texas? Exotic animal traders? Never legal, never humane?" The leopard stirred slightly under their hands, and Larkin found herself holding her breath. The animal's eyes opened fully for the first time, revealing a startling intelligence and something else, a desperate urgency that made Larkin's chest tight. "She's trying to get somewhere," Larkin realized aloud. No wild animal would cross an interstate unless they absolutely had to. She looked up at Boone, finding his eyes already on her, understanding passing between them without words. The sound of approaching sirens cut through the rain. Larkin knew that within minutes, the scene would be swarming with backup and emergency vehicles. But something had changed in those few critical moments on the wet highway. She looked at Boone, this stranger who hadn't hesitated to risk his life to save an injured animal. and felt a connection she hadn't expected. I don't suppose you're heading in any particular direction, she asked, surprising herself. Boone shook his head, water dripping from his cap. My route's flexible. Something tells me you might need an extra pair of hands with this situation. Yeah. Leopard made a soft sound beneath the blanket, almost like a sigh, as if sensing she was finally safe. Larkin placed a gentle hand on her side, feeling the two prominent ribs beneath the wet fur. I have a feeling this is just the beginning of something bigger, she said, watching as the first backup units pulled up to the scene, their red and blue lights painting the rain in alternating colors. Then it's a good thing you're not handling it alone, Boone replied, and in that moment, despite the chaos around them and the uncertainty ahead, Larkin felt the first spark of hope. Whatever this injured leopard was running from, whatever had caused her desperate highway crossing, Larkin knew she would see it through, and somehow she knew Boone would be right there beside her. The storm continued to rage above them, but, on that dangerous stretch of Interstate 10, something extraordinary had happened. A wildlife officer, a trucker, and an injured leopard's paths had crossed, setting in motion events that would change all their lives forever. The rural veterinary clinic emerged from the rainy darkness like a beacon of hope. Larkin's state truck splashed through puddles as she pulled up to Dr. Cora Lively's modest building. The emergency lights cast red flashes across the weathered wooden sign, reading Lively Animal Care. Larkin had called ahead, and Dr. Lively was already waiting at the door, her lean frame wrapped in a worn lab coat. Her tired eyes widened at the sight of the injured leopard in the back of Larkin's truck. Good Lord, Dr. Lively breathed, helping. Larkin carefully moved the sedated animal onto a stretcher. I've treated exotic pets before, but nothing like this. Inside the clinic's examination room, bright fluorescent lights revealed the full extent of the leopard's condition. Deep rope burns circled its neck, raw and infected. Its spotted coat was dull and patchy, hanging loose over prominent ribs and hip bones. Severe malnourishment, Dr. Lively muttered, running practiced hands over the leopard's frame. Dehydration. These burns? Someone kept her tied up. She reached for a handheld scanner, running it over the animal's shoulder. The device beeped. There's a microchip. Larkin's heart raced as Dr. Lively pulled up the registration information on her computer. Owner listed as Randall Voss, the vet said quietly. Voss, Exotic Animal Reserve? The millionaire rancher. Larkin frowned. I didn't know he had leopards. He has all sorts of exotic animals. Major donor to the county? Dr. Lively's voice was carefully neutral, but Larkin caught the slight tremor in it. Before they could discuss it further, the clinic's front door chimed. Heavy footsteps echoed down the hallway, and Randall Voss himself appeared in the doorway. His silver hair was perfectly styled despite the late hour, his expensive suit unwrinkled. He carried a leather briefcase and wore a practiced smile that didn't reach his eyes. I received an alert about my property being scanned, he said smoothly. I see you've found my missing leopard. I have all the registration papers right here. He patted his briefcase. Larkin stepped between Voss and the examination table. This animal has been severely abused and neglected. She's not going anywhere until we investigate. Voss's smile tightened. Officer Hayes, is it? I understand your concern, but this is a simple matter of property law. That leopard is legally mine. He pulled out a stack of documents. Everything is in order. I can have my lawyers verify. I don't care about your papers, Larkin cut in. Look at her condition. Those rope burns. She's starving. Animals sometimes injure themselves in captivity, Voss said smoothly. I assure you she receives excellent care at my facility. Dr. Lively can confirm she's done work for my reserve before. Larkin glanced at the vet, who had gone very still. Dr. Lively wouldn't meet her eyes. Voss's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and smiled. Ah, perfect timing. I've just heard from your supervisor, Officer Hayes. He agrees this is a simple property matter that should be resolved immediately. Larkin's own phone rang moments later. She answered to hear her department chief's voice, tense and clipped. Hayes, release the animal to Mr. Voss. That's an order, sir, with all due respect. This is a clear case of animal abuse, which Mr. Voss's facility will investigate internally. Stand down, Hayes. Don't make this difficult. Larkin's hand tightened on her phone. She looked at the leopard on the table, at the raw wounds around its neck, the way its breath came in shallow pants. Something about this wasn't right. This wasn't just about one injured animal. The leopard had been desperately trying to escape something. No, she said firmly, both to her phone and to Voss. I'm not releasing her. File whatever complaints you want. But this leopard stays in protective custody until we complete a full investigation. Voss's polite mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something cold and angry underneath. You're making a serious mistake, Officer Hayes. I have considerable influence in this county. Are you threatening a state wildlife officer? Larkin asked quietly. He smiled again, all smooth charm. Of course not, just stating facts. He turned to leave, then paused. Dr. Lively, I trust you'll do the right thing here. Remember who funded your new X-ray machine. After he left, silence filled the examination room. Dr. Lively's hands shook slightly as she treated the leopard's wounds. He's right about his influence, the vet said finally. He's got half the county board in his pocket. Are you sure about this, Officer Hayes? Larkin watched the leopard's chest rise and fall. Something worse is going on at that reserve. This animal wasn't just injured, she was escaping. And I'm going to find out why. She could already feel the pressure building, her phone buzzing with messages from increasingly angry superiors. Voss's subtle threats hanging in the air. But looking at the wounded leopard, Larkin knew she couldn't back down. Whatever she had, stumbled into, whatever the cost to her career might be, she had to see this through. The leopard's eyes fluttered open briefly, meeting Larkin's gaze. In that moment, Larkin could have sworn she saw understanding there, and something like desperate hope. We're calling her Indigo, Larkin told Dr. Lively, and she's staying right here until we get to the truth. The morning sun beat down mercilessly, as Deputy Morgan Webber stepped out of his patrol car, adjusting his belt with an air of self-importance. Larkin stood her ground near the clinic entrance, her arms crossed as she watched him approach with a familiar yellow citation pad in hand. Officer Hayes, the deputy drawled, got a complaint about you interfering with private livestock last night. He tore off the citation with practiced efficiency. Mr. Voss's property, to be specific. Larkin's jaw tightened as she accepted the paper. That leopard isn't livestock, deputy. She's an exotic animal showing clear signs of abuse. Not according to these papers. He tapped the citation. Mr. Voss has all the proper permits. You're the one overstepping here. Before Larkin could respond, her phone buzzed. The screen showed her supervisor's number, Frank Martinez. Her stomach dropped, but she answered anyway. Hayes here. What's this I'm hearing about you refusing to release animals to their rightful owner? Frank's voice crackled with barely contained frustration. Voss just called the commissioner. Do you have any idea how much trouble you're stirring up? Sir, if you could just see the condition of this animal, drop it. Hayes, that's an order. Release the cat to Voss and get back to your regular duties. We've got actual work that needs doing. Larkin's free hand clenched into a fist. With all due respect, sir, this is actual work. That leopard, this isn't a debate. Hayes, handle it now. The line went dead. Inside the clinic. Dr. Lively was checking Indigo's vital signs. The leopard lay sedated on the examination table, her breathing steady but shallow. Larkin approached slowly, her eyes drawn to the animal's underside. Dr. Lively, she said quietly, look at this. She pointed to Indigo's belly, where swollen mammary glands were visible beneath the dull coat. The veterinarian leaned in closer. She's been nursing recently, very recently. There has to be a cub somewhere. Larkin's mind raced back to the previous night, to the desperate way Indigo had dragged herself across the highway. She wasn't just running away, she was trying to get back to something. Her phone buzzed again, this time with a text from Boone. Her heart lifted slightly at seeing his name. The message was brief but urgent. Need to talk. Important. Outside, she found him pacing near his truck, his usual calm demeanor replaced by nervous energy. Been listening to the CB radio, he said without preamble. Bunch of chatter about a refrigerated truck parked down by the flood channel, couple miles from where we found her. Drivers talking about weird noises coming from inside. What kind of noises? Animal sounds. And get this, someone mentioned seeing Voss's ranch hands around there early this morning. Larkin's pulse quickened. The flood channel, that's where she was headed. Away from the highway, not toward it. She pulled out her phone and pulled up a map. There's an access road that runs parallel to it. Perfect spot to hide something you don't want found. Or someone, Boone added quietly. The weight of understanding settled between them. Indigo hadn't just been escaping. She'd hidden her cub somewhere near that flood channel before making her desperate attempt to find help. Now that cub was alone, possibly hurt, definitely hungry. We need to move fast, Larkin said, already heading for her truck. That cub won't survive long without its mother. What about your orders? The citation. Larkin's green eyes flashed with determination. Some things matter more than orders. You coming? Boone didn't hesitate. Right behind you. As they climbed into their respective vehicles, Larkin couldn't shake the image of that tiny cub. Somewhere, out there in the unforgiving Texas heat, the stakes had just gotten much higher. This wasn't just about saving one abused animal anymore. It was about preventing an innocent life from being lost or falling into the hands of whoever had hurt Indigo in the first place. She started her engine, her mind already mapping out the area they needed to search. Time was running out, and she could feel it slipping away with every passing minute. The citation crinkled in her pocket, a reminder of the professional risk she was taking. But looking back at the clinic where Indigo lay fighting for her life, Larkin knew she had no choice. Some battles were worth the cost, no matter how high. Through her windshield, she could see Boone's truck pulling out ahead of her, leading the way toward the flood channel. At least she wasn't in this fight alone. That thought gave her strength as she pressed down on the accelerator, leaving behind the world of bureaucracy and orders for something far more urgent. A race against time to save a life that couldn't save itself. The morning sun climbed higher in the sky as their vehicles kicked up dust on the access road, each minute bringing them closer to either hope or heartbreak. Larkin could only pray they weren't too late. The afternoon heat shimmered off the concrete as Larkin and Boone pulled up to the drainage culvert in her state truck. Storm clouds gathered on the horizon, threatening rain. The culvert's massive, concrete mouth gaped open beneath the highway overpass, partially hidden by tall grass and debris. "This is where the truck was spotted?" Larkin asked, grabbing her flashlight from the glove compartment. Boone nodded, his weathered face grim. "Couple drivers mentioned seeing a refrigerated rig parked here last night. Said it looked mighty suspicious, especially given the weather." They approached the culvert carefully, scanning the muddy ground. Larkin's breath caught as her beam illuminated distinct paw prints in the soft earth, too small for an adult leopard. "Look," she whispered, crouching down. "These are fresh. The cub came through here." The prints led directly into a large storm pipe that branched off from the main culvert. Dark water trickled from its opening, steadily rising as the approaching storm system pushed water through the drainage network. "We need to hurry," Boone said, eyeing the water level. "That pipe's going to flood soon." Larkin nodded, already moving forward. The pipe was wide enough for them to enter, though they had to crouch. Their flashlight beams bounced off the curved walls as they followed the trail of tiny paw prints in the mud. Paw prints in the mud. "The cub must have been terrified," Larkin murmured, running blind through here in the dark. They'd gone about 50 yards when Boone suddenly grabbed her arm. "Kill the light," he hissed. Larkin clicked off her flashlight just as voices echoed. From the culvert entrance behind them, heavy boots splashed through water. "Check every branch pipe." A gruff voice ordered. "Boss wants that cub found before the storm hits. Got the tranks ready?" "Yeah? And bolt cutters, if we need 'em." Another voice answered. "Things probably trapped behind one of them grates." Larkin's heart pounded as she and Boone pressed themselves against the pipe wall. The voices grew closer, accompanied by the beam of powerful spotlights sweeping the tunnel. "This way," Boone breathed, barely audible. He tugged her toward a smaller maintenance tunnel branching off to the side. They squeezed through just as boots splashed past their hiding spot. For several tense minutes, they remained frozen in the cramped space, listening to Voss's men searching nearby pipes. Finally, the voices began to fade as the search moved in the opposite direction. "That was too close," Larkin whispered, her hands shaking slightly as she switched her light back on. They backtracked carefully and emerged from the culvert, hurrying to Larkin's truck. The first fat drops of rain were beginning to fall. "We need to get back to the clinic," Larkin said, starting the engine. "Dr. Lively needs to know what's happening." They found the veterinarian in her office, nervously reorganizing files. When Larkin described their close call at the culvert, the color drained from Dr. Lively's face. "I can't keep quiet anymore," she said, her voice trembling. She pulled a thick folder from the bottom drawer of her filing cabinet. "I've been keeping records everything I've seen at Voss's compound over the past 2 years." She spread documents across her desk, medical records, breeding schedules, shipping manifests. "He's running an illegal exotic cat breeding operation. The cubs are sold to private collectors all over the country. The mothers," she swallowed hard, "the mothers are kept in horrible conditions, forced to breed repeatedly until they're too weak to produce anymore." Larkin's hands clenched as she examined the evidence. "This is why Indigo ran. She was trying to save her cub from being sold." "I should have spoken up sooner," Dr. Lively said, wiping her eyes. "But Voss basically owns this town," he threatened, "to ruin me if I ever said anything. My clinic, my patients. I was afraid." "You're doing the right thing now," Boone said quietly. "That's what matters." "This goes way beyond one escaped leopard," Larkin said, gathering the documents. "This is an organized trafficking operation, and now we have proof." Thunder rolled overhead as rain drummed against the clinic's roof. Somewhere in the storm drains, a frightened cub was hiding, but now they knew the full scope of what they were fighting and what was truly at stake. Back at Dr. Lively's clinic, Larkin paced the small examination room while Boone studied a drainage system map spread across the metal table. Dr. Lively stood nervously at her desk, fidgeting with her stethoscope. "The cub can't survive much longer in those pipes," Larkin said, her voice tight with worry. "With this storm coming, that whole system could flood." Dr. Lively nodded, her tired eyes showing fresh determination. "I've got some rescue equipment, from when we had to pull pets from storm drains. A capture loop, some rope. We need to do this smart," Boone interjected, his finger tracing along the map. "Voss has eyes everywhere. One wrong move and we lose our chance, and maybe the cub too." Larkin stopped pacing and joined them at the table. "What if we split up? Dr. Lively, you could check on Indigo at the sanctuary, make it look routine. Boone, you could track Voss's truck, maybe plant a GPS tracker. I'll go after the cub." "Not alone you won't," Boone said firmly. "Those pipes are dangerous, especially with rain coming. I'm backing you up." Dr. Lively pulled open a drawer and retrieved a small electronic device. "I've got a wildlife tracking tag. If you can get it on Voss's truck, we might be able to prove he's moving animals illegally." They gathered their supplies quickly: rope, flashlights, the rescue loop, and emergency medical supplies for the cub. The sky had darkened considerably by the time they reached the culvert, parking Larkin's truck out of sight behind some scrub brush. "I'll keep watch up here," Boone said, helping Larkin secure a safety line around her waist. 2 poles means trouble, 3 means get out fast. Larkin nodded, adjusting her headlamp. The pipe entrance loomed before her, dark water already beginning to trickle through its base. She could hear thunder rumbling in the distance. "Be careful," Dr. Lively whispered, handing Larkin a small medical kit. "That cub will be scared and possibly aggressive. Use the loop if you have to, but try to stay calm. They can sense fear." Taking a deep breath, Larkin got down on her hands and knees and began crawling into the pipe. The metal was cold against her palms, and the sound of dripping water echoed ominously. Her headlamp beam bounced off the curved walls, creating strange shadows that played tricks with her eyes. The pipe narrowed as she moved deeper, forcing her to army crawl through puddles of standing water. The air grew thick and musty, making each breath feel heavy in her lungs. Behind her, the entrance shrank to a distant circle of light. A soft whimper echoed through the pipe, barely audible over the sound of running water. Larkin froze, listening intently. There it was again, the unmistakable cry of a frightened cub. "I hear it," she called back softly, her voice carrying to Boone and Lively. Maybe 30 feet in, the water was rising steadily now, soaking through her uniform. She could feel the current growing stronger against her arms and legs. Time was running out. Inching forward, she finally spotted movement in her beam. A tiny form huddled against the pipe wall, golden eyes reflecting her light. The leopard cub was barely bigger than a house cat, its spotted coat matted and dirty. "Hey there, little one," Larkin whispered, slowly extending the rescue loop. "I'm here to help. Your mama's waiting for you." The cub pressed itself flatter against the wall, baring tiny teeth. Larkin kept her movements slow and deliberate, knowing one wrong move could send it fleeing deeper into the flooding pipe system. Above ground, Boone kept a vigilant watch while Dr. Lively prepared the transport carrier. The storm was moving in fast, wind whipping through the grass and carrying the first heavy drops of rain. "How's it looking down there?" Boone called into the pipe. "Almost got it," Larkin replied, her voice echoing back. "Just need to." There, the loop settled gently around the cub's body, and Larkin quickly but carefully drew it closer. The small creature fought briefly before exhaustion took over, allowing her to secure it against her chest. But as she started to back out, the water level suddenly surged. The storm had hit in full force, sending a rush of runoff through the drainage system. The current pulled at her legs, making each backward movement a struggle. "Boone," she shouted, "pull me out. Now." The safety line went taut, and Larkin felt herself being dragged backward through the pipe. She kept one arm wrapped protectively around the cub, while using the other to shield their faces from the rising water. With a final heave, Boone pulled them clear of the pipe mouth. Rain pounded down as Larkin scrambled up the concrete slope. The cub clutched safely against her chest. Dr. Lively rushed forward with a blanket, helping wrap the shivering animal. "We need to move," Boone urged, already helping Larkin to her feet. Voss's men could show up any minute. As if on cue, headlights appeared on the access road. They quickly loaded into Larkin's truck, the cub secure in Dr. Lively's carrier. Boone took the wheel, navigating carefully through the storm, while Larkin kept watch behind them. "The tracker," Larkin suddenly remembered. "We still need to tag Voss's truck." "Already done," Boone said with a slight smile. "While you were in the pipe, I spotted his truck parked at the gas station up the road. Slap the tracker under the wheel well. Figure he'll lead us right to his operation." Dr. Lively checked the cub's vital signs as they drove, her hands steady despite her obvious nervousness. "She's dehydrated but stable. Just like her mother, she's a fighter." Larkin reached back to touch the carrier gently, feeling the weight of what they'd accomplished and what still lay ahead. They were no longer just three individuals working separately. They had become a team, united by their determination to expose Voss and protect these animals. The rain continued to pour as they made their way back to the sanctuary. But inside the truck cab, there was a sense of quiet triumph. They had won this small battle, even as they prepared for the larger war to come. The beam of Larkin's flashlight caught a glint of movement deep in the culvert. Her heart leaped as two tiny eyes reflected back at her. After hours of searching, they'd finally found the leopard cub. "Found the leopard cub. I see it," she called out, her voice echoing in the concrete pipe. The cub was huddled against the curved wall, soaked and shivering. Murky water swirled around Larkin's boots, rising steadily with the storm. "Careful now," Boone's steady voice came from behind her. He held the safety line attached to her vest, giving her just enough slack to maneuver. Larkin inched forward, speaking in soft, soothing tones. "It's okay, little one. We're here to help." She extended the rescue loop, a padded snare designed for safely catching small animals. The cub pressed itself further against the wall, letting out a pitiful mewl that broke her heart. Water's rising fast. Dr. Lively shouted from the entrance, "You need to hurry." With practiced movements, Larkin slipped the loop over the cub's head and shoulders. The frightened animal squirmed but was too weak to put up much resistance. "Got it?" she called triumphantly, carefully drawing the cub toward her. Boone began pulling them both back, the safety line going taut. Relief flooded through Larkin as she cradled the wet bundle against her chest. The cub was alive, cold and scared, but alive. Just as they emerged from the culvert into the rainy night, brilliant white light exploded around them. Larkin squinted against the harsh glare of multiple floodlights. Dark figures materialized from the shadows, rifles raised. Well, a familiar voice drawled. Randall Voss stepped into view, his expensive boots squelching in the mud. Quite the rescue party we have here. Larkin clutched the cub tighter as his men closed in. She counted at least 6 rifles trained on them. Dr. Lively gasped behind her. While Boone moved closer, his solid presence at her back, a commotion from the clinic drew everyone's attention. Indigo, who should have been safely secured inside, burst through the front door. The leopard's eyes were wild with panic, her maternal instincts driving her toward her cub's cries. "No!" Larkin shouted as one of Voss's men swung his rifle toward the charging mother. Indigo veered away from the weapons, bolting toward the flood channel. The churning water, swollen from the storm, caught her immediately. The current swept her sleek body downstream, her head barely visible above the rapids. Without thinking, Larkin thrust the cub into Dr. Lively's arms and dove toward the channel. Gunshots cracked through the air, bullets spraying water around her. She hit the current hard, the cold shocking her system. Larkin, Boone's voice carried over the roar of water and gunfire. She caught a glimpse of Indigo's struggling form ahead and struck out swimming. The leopard's head disappeared under the surface, then bobbed up again. Larkin's uniform dragged at her limbs, making each stroke a battle against the current. Something solid slammed into her side. A branch or debris carried by the flood. Pain exploded through her ribs as she went under. Water filled her nose and mouth. She kicked desperately, lungs burning, but couldn't tell which way was up, just as panic started to set in. A powerful jerk on her vest yanked her toward the surface. She broke through with a desperate gasp, coughing and spluttering. Boone had used her safety line like a lifeline, the strap still attached to her vest from the culvert rescue. "I've got you," he shouted, bracing himself on the bank as he pulled. "Hold on." More gunshots echoed off the concrete channel walls. Larkin could hear shouting and chaos erupting behind her, but couldn't make out what was happening. Her whole world narrowed to Boone's grip on the line and her fight to keep her head above water. But with one final heave, Boone dragged her onto the muddy bank. She lay there gasping, every breath sending sharp pains through her bruised ribs. Through blurry vision, she saw Indigo managing to claw her way out further downstream, disappearing into the darkness. "Are you crazy?" Boone demanded, his voice rough with concern as he helped her sit up. "You nearly drowned." Before Larkin could respond, another volley of gunfire sent them both ducking for cover. The night had dissolved into complete chaos. Shouts and running figures barely visible through the rain and floodlights. Somewhere in the confusion, she heard Dr. Lively calling out that she still had the cub. Larkin struggled to her feet, leaning heavily on Boone. Her sodden clothes weighed her down, and every movement sent daggers of pain through her side. But her mind was clear on one thing. They needed to protect that cub and find Indigo before Voss's men did. Rain pelted down as Larkin clutched both Indigo and her cub, her muscles straining against the churning water. The leopard's wet fur was matted with mud, her breathing ragged. Behind them, gunshots cracked through the air as Boone used his truck as a shield, keeping Voss's men at bay. "Get them to the clinic," Boone shouted over the storm, his normally quiet voice carrying steel. "I'll hold them here." Dr. Lively appeared at Larkin's side, helping her drag Indigo onto higher ground. The veterinarian's hands were steady, despite her obvious fear. "My truck's just around the bend. We need to move fast. She's in shock." Together they half-carried, half-dragged the big cat while protecting the trembling cub. Larkin's clothes were soaked through, her arms burning with exhaustion, but she refused to let go. Every few steps, another shot rang out, making them flinch. Inside Dr. Lively's clinic, they worked quickly to stabilize Indigo. Bard's body temperature had dropped dangerously low from the floodwaters. While Dr. Lively inserted an IV line, Larkin wrapped both mother and cub in warming blankets. "I've been gathering evidence for months," Dr. Lively admitted as she worked, her voice tight. "Photos, medical records, shipping manifests, everything that proves what Voss has been doing. I was too scared to come forward before, but I can't stay quiet anymore." She pulled out her phone with shaking hands. "I'm sending everything to the Federal Wildlife Trafficking Hotline right now, and the State Veterinary Board. In every newspaper within 100 miles, her fingers flew across the screen, determination replacing her fear. The clinic door burst open as Boone rushed in, rain dripping from his denim jacket. "We need to move fast. Voss's men are regrouping, and they've called in reinforcements. But I've got an idea." He pulled out his own phone, putting it on speaker as he dialed. "Hey Mac, remember that favor you owe me? I need every independent trucker within 50 miles to converge on the rail spur off Highway 10. Yeah, the one by the old grain elevator. There's a black refrigerated rig there that needs to stay put until the feds arrive." More calls followed as Boone activated his network of trucking contacts. Within minutes, reports started coming in of big rigs accidentally blocking access roads and creating traffic snarls around the rail spurway. Voss kept his transport vehicle. "That'll slow them down," Boone said grimly. "But it won't stop them for long. We need a real plan." Larkin looked up from where she was monitoring Indigo's vital signs. The Leopard's breathing had steadied, and the cub was finally nursing. "We've got evidence now. Real proof of what he's doing. And witnesses. We've also got a building full of scared people with guns out there," Dr. Lively pointed out, but her voice was stronger now. "People who've gotten away with this for years. Because nobody stood up to them. Then it's time somebody did." Larkin straightened up, wincing at her sore muscles but feeling a new determination replace her earlier desperation. "Voss thinks he owns this county. That money and connections mean he can do whatever he wants. But he's never faced people who refuse to back down." Boone nodded slowly. "My trucking friends can do more than just block roads. We've got CB radios, dash cams, dozens of witnesses ready to document everything that happens next. And I've got more evidence at my house," Dr. Lively added. "Years of records I kept, hoping someday I'd find the courage to use them, plus contact information for other vets who've seen similar cases but were afraid to speak up." They gathered around a small table, planning their next moves while keeping watch over their injured charges. The storm continued to rage outside, but inside the clinic, fear was giving way to resolve. They weren't just 3 individuals anymore. They were a team, each bringing their own strengths to the fight. "Voss is used to people backing down when he pushes," Larkin said quietly, watching Indigo curl protectively around her cub. "He's never faced somebody pushing back. Not really. Not with witnesses and evidence and public attention." "Then let's give him something new to worry about," Boone replied, his weathered face set with determination, "something bigger than he's ever dealt with before." Thunder crashed outside as they continued planning, but none of them flinched this time. The storm that had started everything was still raging, but now they were ready to face whatever came next. Together, through the downpour, Voss's voice carried sharp and cold. "Take care of them, all of them. We're shipping those cubs tonight, and I want no loose ends." Larkin's heart pounded as she heard his words clearly over the storm. She pressed herself against the muddy embankment, one hand on her phone, the other steadying Indigo, who lay shivering beside her. The Leopard's breathing had grown more labored in the last few minutes, each intake of air seeming to cost her more effort. Boone's semi blocked the only access road to the loading area, its massive bulk creating an impromptu barrier that Voss's smaller vehicles couldn't pass. Through the rain-streaked darkness, Larkin could see the silhouettes of Voss's men, their rifles glinting under the security lights. "You're making a serious mistake," Voss called out, his polished demeanor cracking. He raised his own rifle, the expensive scope catching light as he aimed it toward their position. "Last chance to walk away." Larkin's fingers trembled slightly as she activated her phone's camera, careful to keep the flash off. She needed steady hands now more than ever. Through the viewfinder, she framed the perfect shot. Randall Voss, respected businessman and supposed conservationist, pointing a high-powered rifle directly at unarmed wildlife officers and a veterinarian. The image would destroy his carefully crafted public persona. "Got it," she whispered to Dr. Lively, who was monitoring Indigo's vital signs with growing concern. The vet's face was drawn with worry as she pressed her fingers against the Leopard's neck. "Her pulse is weakening," Lively murmured. "The stress and the cold water, she needs immediate medical attention." Boone's voice carried over from his position by the truck. "Larkin, the refrigerated trailer there, loading it now." Through the rain, Larkin could make out men hurrying between buildings, carrying what looked like animal transport crates. The evidence of their trafficking operation was being moved right in front of them, but they were pinned down by Voss's armed men. "Send the photo," Dr. Lively urged, her hands pressed against Indigo's side. "Send it now, before they can stop us." Larkin's fingers flew over the phone screen, attaching the damning photo to messages bound for federal wildlife authorities, her department superiors, and local media. Her hands shook with cold and adrenaline as she hit send, watching the progress. "Bartik forward. Message sent," she breathed, just as Voss's voice cut through the night again. "Shoot out their tires," he ordered. "Get that truck moved." Gunshots cracked through the air, but Boone had already flattened himself behind his truck's massive wheels. The bullets pinged harmlessly off the metal body. "Let them waste their ammunition," Boone called out. "Help's coming. I radioed my trucking network. They've got every exit covered." Indigo made a weak sound, her head lolling against the mud. The cub, protected in Dr. Lively's medical carrier, mewed plaintively, as if sensing its mother's distress. "She's crashing," Dr. Lively said urgently. "We need to get her to the clinic now, or we'll lose her." The stakes had never been higher. They had the evidence they needed, proof of Voss's crimes captured forever in that single photograph, but Indigo's life hung by a thread. The Leopard who had started all this, who had crawled across a highway in desperate hope of saving her cub, was slipping away while they waited for help to arrive. Larkin pressed her hand against Indigo's damp fur, feeling the weakening rise and fall of her breathing. "Hold on," she whispered to the brave mother. "Just hold on a little longer." Through the rain, they could hear sirens in the distance. Growing closer, Voss heard them too. His next words carried an edge of panic that stripped away his usual, "Polish, get those crates loaded now. Move everything out through the back road." But Boone's trucker network had done their job well. Over the CB radio clipped to his belt, voices crackled with confirmation every possible escape route was blocked by semis, their drivers standing firm against any attempt to pass. The photo evidence was out there now, spreading through channels that Voss couldn't control. His carefully constructed empire was crumbling, but Larkin couldn't celebrate yet. Not while Indigo's life still hung in the balance, each breath more difficult than the last. They had won the larger war, but the most important battle, saving the brave mother who had started it all, was still uncertain. As red and blue lights began to flash through the rain, Larkin held Indigo close, willing her to hold on just a little longer. The wail of sirens pierced the stormy night, growing louder as multiple patrol cars raced toward them. Their red and blue lights painted the wet pavement in alternating colors, reflecting off puddles and creating an otherworldly scene. Deputy Marshal stepped out of the first vehicle, his stance confident as he approached. "Mr. Voss, step away from the area," he called out, but his voice lacked genuine authority. The familiarity in his tone revealed his allegiance. "This woman is trespassing on my property," Voss declared smoothly, gesturing toward Larkin. "She's interfering with my legitimate business operations." Dr. Lively emerged from her truck, clutching a waterproof tablet. Her hands shook, but her voice was steady. "I have records," she announced. "Years of detailed documentation. Every illegal breeding operation, every sale, every violation of wildlife laws." She tapped the screen, and several deputies' phones pinged with incoming files. "Those are confidential veterinary records," Voss snapped, but uncertainty crept into his expression. "I kept copies of everything," Lively continued, growing stronger, including payments made to certain local officials to look the other way. She met Deputy Marshal's eyes directly. "Everything." The deputy's confident posture wilted. Other officers began scrolling through their phones, their expressions changing as they absorbed the evidence. Larkin stood protectively near Indigo and her cub, which was now wrapped in a warm blanket. The mother leopard's breathing remained labored, but her eyes stayed fixed on her baby. Voss's careful composure cracked. His face contorted with rage as he saw his carefully constructed world crumbling. "This is absurd," he snarled. "I won't let you destroy everything I've built." Without warning, he lunged toward the cub, perhaps thinking to destroy evidence or use it as leverage. But he hadn't counted on Indigo's maternal instinct. Despite her weakness, the leopard surged forward with explosive power. She slammed into Voss, driving him backward until he hit the guardrail with a metallic clang. Her massive paws pressed against his chest, sharp claws extending through her padded feet. "Indigo, no," Larkin shouted. Even though Voss deserved punishment, she couldn't let the leopard kill him. It would only end in Indigo being destroyed. Larkin moved without hesitation, placing herself between predator and prey. She wrapped her arms around Indigo's neck, speaking softly but firmly. "Easy, girl, easy. Your cub is safe now. He can't hurt either of you anymore." The leopard's muscles trembled under Larkin's touch. For a moment, time seemed suspended as human and animal connected. Then slowly, gradually, Indigo's tension released. She allowed Larkin to guide her away from Voss, who slumped against the guardrail, his expensive suit now muddy and torn. "Randall, Voss," came a new voice, authoritative and unfamiliar. A tall woman in a Federal Wildlife Service uniform stepped forward, flanked by two agents. "You're under arrest for multiple violations of the Endangered Species Act, illegal trafficking of exotic animals, and conspiracy to commit wildlife crimes." As they cuffed him, Voss's carefully maintained mask of sophistication crumbled completely. "Do you know who I am?" he shouted. "I own half this county." "Not anymore," the federal agent replied calmly, reading him his rights as rain continued to fall. Boone appeared at Larkin's side, helping her steady Indigo, who had finally collapsed. From exhaustion, "You did it," he said softly. "You brought down his whole operation." "We did it," Larkin corrected, glancing gratefully at both him and Dr. Lively, who was already examining Indigo with professional concern. More vehicles arrived, animal transport units, federal investigators, and legitimate veterinary support. Voss's empire was falling apart in real time, his corrupt allies scattering as additional evidence emerged from his compound. Through it all, Larkin stayed with Indigo and her cub, ensuring they received proper care. The mother leopard's eyes remained alert despite her exhaustion, watching her baby being examined by gentle hands that, for the first time in her life, meant her no harm. As dawn broke through the clouds, Larkin watched the federal transport units, preparing to take Indigo and her cub to a proper wildlife rehabilitation facility. Her badge caught the first rays of sunlight, no longer feeling like a burden but a symbol of what was right and possible when someone refused to look the other way. Dawn painted the Texas sky in soft brushstrokes of pink and gold, casting long shadows across the sanctuary's grounds. Larkin Hayes stood at the observation platform, watching as Indigo and her cub explored their new enclosure. The massive natural habitat stretched before her, complete with trees, rocks, and a crystal-clear pool, everything the leopards needed to thrive. "They look different already," Boone said softly, coming to stand beside her. His familiar presence brought warmth to the cool morning air. Larkin nodded, her throat tight with emotion. Just 2 weeks after the dramatic rescue, The change in both leopards was remarkable. Indigo's coat had regained its shine, and her movements were fluid and graceful. The cub, now properly fed and cared for, bounded through the grass with boundless energy. The sanctuary director says they're adjusting beautifully, Larkin said, her voice thick. No more tiny cages or concrete floors. No more fear. Dr. Lively approached, clipboard in hand. Their latest checkup shows tremendous improvement. Gaining weight, and the cub's development is right on track. She smiled, the exhaustion of recent weeks evident in her eyes, but overshadowed by satisfaction. The federal authorities were impressed with our documentation. Voss won't be trafficking cubs again anytime soon. The mention of Voss brought a flash of memories, the desperate chase, the flooding culvert, the final confrontation, but those memories no longer held the same sting. Justice had been served? The evidence they'd gathered, including Larkin's photograph of Voss aiming his rifle, had sealed his fate. His empire of exploitation had crumbled, and his network of corrupt officials was being dismantled piece by piece. Officer Hayes, a voice called from behind them. Larkin turned to find her department chief approaching, his expression unusually respectful. Got a minute? Boone squeezed her shoulder gently before stepping away with Dr. Lively, giving them privacy. The department's creating a new wildlife trafficking interdiction unit, the chief said without preamble. We need someone who understands the stakes and has proven they can handle the pressure. Someone with both compassion and courage. He met her eyes directly. I'd like you to lead it. Larkin's heart skipped a beat. After years of being overlooked, of having her concerns dismissed, the recognition felt surreal. Sir, you've earned it, Hayes. What you did here, it wasn't just about saving one leopard and her cub. You exposed a major trafficking operation and showed us where our system was failing. We need more of that. She thought of all the animals, like Indigo, all the corrupt operators like Voss. Yes, she said firmly, I accept. The chief nodded, satisfied. Good. We'll need your input on building the team. And he glanced meaningfully at Boone, who stood chatting with Dr. Lively. I understand Mr. Calder's trucking network proved invaluable. We could use that kind of expertise and connection. In an advisory capacity, warmth bloomed in Larkin's chest as she watched Boone. From that first moment on the rain-slicked highway, he'd been her rock, steady, loyal, and unshakable. Their partnership had deepened into something precious, something that made her stronger. As the chief walked away, Boone returned to her side. Everything okay? Better than okay, she said, and told him about the new position. His face lit up with pride. They finally saw what I've known since that first night, he said softly. You're a force of nature, Larkin Hayes. A commotion from the enclosure drew their attention. The cub had discovered a new toy, a sturdy ball that bounced unpredictably. They watched as Indigo indulgently supervised her baby's play, her posture relaxed and confident in their new home. Want to hold her one last time? Dr. Lively asked, approaching with the cub in her arms. We need to do her final health check. Before the full release into the habitat, Larkin carefully took the squirming bundle. The cub had grown so much, her fur plush and healthy, her eyes bright with mischief. Gone was the terrified, half-drowned creature they'd pulled from the storm. In her place was a thriving young leopard with her whole life ahead of her, standing there in the strengthening sunlight, with Boone's solid presence beside her and the warm weight of the cub in her arms. Larkin felt the truth of her own transformation. She was no longer the overlooked officer, struggling to be heard. She had found her voice, her purpose, and her partner. The sun crested the horizon fully, washing the sanctuary in golden light. In the enclosure, Indigo stretched luxuriously in a patch of sunshine, free and safe at last. Her cub squirmed happily. In Larkin's embrace, ready to return to her mother and begin their new life. Time to let go, Larkin whispered, both to herself and the cub. Dr. Lively gently took the young leopard, carrying her back to the habitat's entrance. They watched as the cub bounded straight to Indigo, the two reuniting with gentle huffs and, nuzzling Boone's hand, found hers, their fingers intertwining naturally. Ready for what comes next? He asked. Larkin squeezed his hand, thinking of the challenges ahead. The cases to solve, the animals to save, the wrongs to right. But now she had a team behind her, authority to act, and Boone beside her. She was more than ready. Yes, she said simply, watching mother and cub disappear into their new world. If this ending felt like it was written for you, subscribe and join me tomorrow for another story that might feel the same.